Hey, everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with a special edition of the Jungle Roar podcast brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and CLNS Media. I am joined for this schedule release reaction and prediction. We'll get to those. I'm joined by Richard Skinny of Local 12 and Local12.com. Skinny taking time out from a golf outing. Maybe he can talk about that a little bit and who he saw this morning out at that golf outing. We can talk about that. But obviously, Skinny, the schedule came out last night. The Bengals, like every other NFL team, have 17 games, but there's a uniqueness to every single schedule. I want to ask you to start. Where did you think the most unique elements of the Bengals 2026 schedule lies?
I got three, but I'll give you two, and we'll go to the other one a little bit later on. But number one was that stretch of games starting with Madrid, and then you go to the Sunday night game at home against Pittsburgh, and then the road game on Monday night at Washington. That just seems like a big ask. I think the international trip to some degree are barbaric. I really do. I know people aren't going to whine about guys making millions of dollars to get on a plane and go to another city, but they play on that Sunday, November the 1st, at home against Tennessee. Monday, as you know, Mike, is a recovery day in the NFL. That's when guys come in, get treatment,
Right.
lift weights, all those things, have some meetings, etc. Tuesday is normally the off day. So if you want to keep this week normal, if you're Zach Taylor and staff and all those concerned, you're probably going to be traveling on that Tuesday. And yeah, you can say, yeah, all you're doing on your off day is sitting in a plane. Yeah, a 300-pound man sitting in a plane for 8 or 9 hours, however long that takes, that's not good coming off of a game just less than 48 hours before.
Right.
Then you go through your normal practice routine probably. And again, I'm surmising. They may have a different travel itinerary. I'm assuming this is what it'll be. Then you're over there to practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, it's going to take you a day to acclimate, so that Wednesday practice is probably going to be a blank show, if you can imagine. Then you play on Sunday, and then instead of having your recovery day on Monday, you're flying back at some point overnight. Then you're going to do your recovery. Then your off day. Then you're going to start to get prepared for that Sunday night game on that Wednesday. That's just, I'm sorry, man. That sounds like a big ask to me. And I'm not here to whine for professional athletes or NFL players. And they do make money. And they do get world-class treatment physically. All those things. I would challenge anybody to go do it. That's all I'm saying. I don't think it's going to be fun or easy for anybody.
All right. My answer to that is I think the Bengals are going to stay ahead of things as much as they can. I think they're probably going to leave, like you said, on Tuesday. They'll have a day off on Wednesday. And I think they're going to treat that game in Atlanta much like they would treat a game toward the end of the season. They're going, like you said, they're going to have to manage people and their rest very, very proactively. And I think you're going to wind up with two practices that week, Thursday and Friday. It's going to be essentially, even though it's a full stretch of days between games like you normally would have, it's going to be like playing on a short week. And I think that's
Sure.
the way the Bengals will treat that game. And I think talent will rise to the top with this Bengals team this year. And that's what I think all of the moves were made in the offseason. There's going to be challenges to every single schedule. And I think what you're expecting from a more veteran group of Bengals this year is to be able to acclimate and to accept the challenges of the schedule a little bit better. And that's the way I see those stretch of games. I do think the biggest challenge is not having the bye week after the game in Madrid. I acknowledge that fully, and that's going to be a challenge for the Bengals. But I think there is going to also be the motivation of trying to get back on track like that because it's an AFC North game against Pittsburgh right out of the chute. And yes, guys are going to feel tired and whatnot, but I think there is going to be the urgency. There is going to be an urgency with this season from training camp all the way through because I think of all of the chips that have been pushed to the middle of the table, Skinny. And that's the way I see that stretch of games. It's absolutely going to be critical. I don't have them winning in Washington, and we can get to our projections in just a moment. I think that game's going to be too difficult, like you said, Monday night and whatever. However, I do see Tennessee, Atlanta, and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, mind you, with a brand new head coach and Mike McCarthy. I see those as three eminently winnable games for the Bengals.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing that stood out to me was the early bye week. Obviously, it's the earliest in Zach Taylor's tenure as head coach. It comes
Right.
in week 6. And listen, there's never a perfect formula to this. The Bengals have kind of gotten fortunate that it always feels like for them it's like middle of the season, like literally give or take a week. It's almost right dead in the middle. So they've been fortunate with that. And as you know, bye weeks get doled out at different times. So sometimes you draw the short straw on the bye week, and the Bengals drew it this year by having it after 5 games. Maybe it'll turn out to be the perfect time for them to have it because come out of the bye week, they have to go play at Baltimore. So you get a little bit of extra rest and preparation for a huge, divisional game on the road where you haven't had a whole lot of success. So maybe that's a positive factor. And then I said there were 3 things, so I'll go ahead and give you the third. This was a little weird to me. They only have back-to-back road games once and back-to-back home games once. The back-to-back road games are week 2 and week 3 where they play at Houston, at Pittsburgh.
Right.
And then at the end of the year where they play home to Baltimore on New Year's Eve, which stood out to me as well. I should have said that one. That was, I think, probably the one that stood out to everybody. I want to touch on that game in just a second, what that's going to look like downtown. And then they finish up with Cleveland at home. And then you can argue the game before that, actually, which is a road game. It's at Indy. That's a nice little bus trip. It's not, there's no taxing travel there. So your road game before you finish with back-to-back homes is a short trip. And so I think they got a little bit of a favor there, but it's just weird because, Mike, you've covered this league long enough. It feels like every year there's that stretch of, 3 games in a row on the road, and then you get a stretch of 3 at home, or you have a couple of back-to-back roads and a couple of back-to-back homes. They don't have that this year. They have one of each, one back-to-back road, one back-to-back home.
I will tell you that I thought last year, the stretch that you're referring to for me was that stretch of Pittsburgh, New England, Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore. And I think it, for all intents and purposes, did kind of seal the Bengals' fate, losing those games the way they did. They had no way to come back from that. For me this year, when I look at the start of the schedule, it ain't easy. Tampa Bay.
I don't know. I think it is.
I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be particularly easy right out of the chute. Week 1 is always week 1. And you're talking about Baker Mayfield. This is a guy capable of lighting it up for 350 yards at the drop of a hat. Go ahead.
You're going to say no, I was going to pony off what you said. When he was in Cleveland, he was a Bengals killer in Cleveland.
Right. And week 1 is always a wild card. The Bengals defensive players are going to be in their first year of their first week of getting to know each other, right? So to me, that's the uncertainty there with Tampa Bay at home. I still have them winning that game, but that ain't going to be easy. Then you travel to Houston and DeMeco Ryans' defense in week number 2. What have we learned about Joe Burrow and the Bengal offense over the last 6 years, Skinny? They don't start fast, do they?
A lot of things. Yeah, right.
And if you're not starting fast and you're going to Houston, that's going to be a difficult game. I don't have them winning that game. Then they go at Pittsburgh. I still think whether it's Aaron Rodgers,
they stink.
They are not good. They should beat Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. I have them sweeping the Steelers this year. I just do. I think the Bengals are a better team. And that game at Pittsburgh, I have them winning. Home to Jacksonville, I have them losing that game.
Really?
I do, because I don't think this Bengals team traditionally gets off to fast starts. We've learned that from years gone by. And Jacksonville is an up-and-coming team. Skinny,
I like Jacksonville. They're
won
good.
its division last year.
Yeah, no,
and they can't. So you're talking about 4 challenging games to start the year. Then you go at Miami. That has to be a win before the bye.
Yeah,
that
total
is
rebuild.
Just not. There's no other result acceptable but beating the Miami Dolphins. Then you're at your bye. Then you play at Baltimore. I have them going 3-3 to start their 6 games. 3-3. I think they get their rhythm against Tennessee and in Madrid against Atlanta and beat Pittsburgh. Lose to Washington. I'm just going to run it down now. They absolutely beat New Orleans at home.
Yep.
They lose at Cleveland just because you're going to lose once to Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. They just think that. They're going to beat Kansas City. They'll beat Carolina. And oh, no, though. I have them losing at Carolina. That's their 5th and final loss. Then I have them winning their final 3 at Indy, Baltimore, and Cleveland at home.
Well, we come to the same record. A couple of things. I will tell you, though, I mean, those 5 games before the bye, you can't be worse than 3-2, in my opinion. If you're 2-3 and you come out of the bye to Baltimore and lose to go to 2-4, then you are digging out of the hole. And digging out of the hole can be really, really difficult. So I think 3-2 at worst, and I've got them 4-1. I have them losing to Houston. I have them winning the other 4 games before the bye. I have them losing at Baltimore. I have them losing at Washington, and I have them losing at Carolina and at Indy. Just because it's that back-to-back road game. You're coming off the home Kansas City game, which is always going to be emotionally charged. I mean, there's the possibility the Kansas City game is to clinch a playoff berth. I mean, who knows? So yeah, I think we both came.
Could be.
I think we both came to 12-5 in different ways.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I do think the Kansas City game could have home field advantage ramifications if the Bengals surprise us and get up to 13 wins, which would be a record for the Bengals in the regular season. They have won 12 games in their past. I believe it is 4 times.
I think that's right. That sounds right.
81, 88, 2012, and 2022.
Yep.
So those 4 previous times they've won 12 games in a regular season. They could get to 13, but for this team with the 3rd easiest schedule in the National Football League, and I realize it's all on paper from last year, I think 12 games is a bare minimum of where this team should be.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas has their win total set at over-under win total set at 9.5, and I think the window is 10 to 13. I think that's the fair window to look at, and whatever it falls into for however ways it does, I think that's where you're looking at this. So I think the over 9.5 is the way to go here, and I don't think we're saying that as homers. I think that's the fair way to go. Now, I do want to get to the New Year's Eve game for a second, Mike.
Yes, please
and
do.
And the ramifications there. Okay, so I just want to take you through this potential scenario. It's the next to last game. It's the divisional game. Maybe it's to clinch the division. Maybe it's to clinch a 1 seed. Again, these are maybes. Can you imagine what downtown is going to be like with pregame tailgating, game drinking, post-game heading to the bars because midnight's fast approaching and you want to toast in the new year. And if you factor in if they clinch a playoff berth or the division or a number 1 seed, I don't even want to leave the stadium till 8 o'clock in the morning. That's the only time I think I'm going to feel safe. It's crazy. It has a chance to be off the charts crazy.
Part of that is fun, but I also went through what I went through opening day outside Great American Ballpark.
Yeah, good point.
That wasn't fun.
No,
that was scary.
Yeah, I understand you.
And I don't want to get into geopolitical and politic talk about Cincinnati, but I hope the city leaders and Hamilton County leaders learn something from what happened to the Reds after opening day and bring in more reinforcements. They're going to have to, because you talked about 43,000 at the Reds game, but that was a daytime game.
That's right. No, you're right. You're right.
Late afternoon, but still in the daylight, and the crowd started to build and build. What do you have the potential for on New Year's Eve with a night game, with everything you mentioned potentially being on the line? You would hope there's lots of reinforcement, because you want people to be safe. You want people to enjoy the game, but you want people to be safe.
Well, and I will tell you, and listen, I'm not in charge of this, but I almost would say bring the old-fashioned paddy wagon down. That, if you're publicly intoxicated and they can prove it, we're taking you in. We're throwing you in the back of this thing here, and when we load the van up, we're going to take you all in and get you off the streets. Because, again, I know people want to party, and I'm all for that. But again, when you mix in, and that's the other part, Mike, you mix in tailgating for an 8:15 or whatever it is, 8:20 kickoff. Think about that for a second. That's a whole bunch of day drinking leading into potentially game drinking into, hey, let's spill down the street because we want to toast in midnight. And, oh, yeah, we won the division. Let's toast that too. That's got a chance for mayhem, man.
You just hope the city and county leaders
are
well prepared. He is Richard Skinner. My name is Mike Petralia Trags. We are talking 2026 Bengals schedule. and we'll be back with more right after this. The regular season is wrapped and the NBA playoffs are finally here, and there's no better way to cash in on the high-flying hoops action than Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Every bucket, every assist, every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks. So do not pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Do it live. 2026 NBA Finals Sweepstakes is live. Pick live squares during the NBA playoffs, and you could win a trip for two to the NBA Finals. To enter, just make out a $5 lineup with at least one live NBA player pick during any part of the 2026 NBA playoffs. Live player picks are picks made after a game is already in progress. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Skinny, what do you make of the Bengals having the third easiest schedule in the NFL? Do you think that matters, or is that one of those things that's a great offseason stat, but once the season evolves and becomes its own creature, then that's the way you really judge the strength of schedule?
Yeah, I think you judge it on the current roster of the teams. I mean, you can't. I mean, most teams have had overhaul of some kind in an offseason, whether it's a new quarterback, key free agent signings. I mean, listen, the Bengals were 6-11 last year, right? And there's a lot of mitigating circumstances that this is not a 6-11 team that decided, we're going to fix the 6-11 team. And so you can look and go, well, I'm playing a 6-11 team. No, you're really not. You're playing a team now that we've just picked to go 12-5. Doesn't make us right, but a team that we believe has done good things, had good pieces that were hurt, have done some other things. And so, yeah, I don't make much of that. I know it's easy to do. The last place or the third place finish got you a couple of likewise third place finishers. Oh, one of those third place finishers happened to be the Kansas City Chiefs. So with a healthy Kansas City Chiefs was not a third place 6-11 team, right? And Washington the same way. Washington's playoff team in 2024. The quarterback got hurt last year. They had all kinds of injuries. They spent a bunch of money in the offseason to fix the defense. The quarterback's coming back. That's not a third-place team either. So, no, I don't. I just don't. Again, I think it is fun fodder to talk about and look at, but I don't think it means a daggone thing for 2026.
You know what we haven't talked about? The two Trey Hendrickson revenge games. What do you think?
That's right. You're right. It'll be interesting to see, the especially on that New Year's Eve, if he's still healthy and playing, and he might not be, what that greeting is like for Trey Hendrickson. And obviously they play that game right after the bye week at Baltimore and Trey. And listen, I've said this before. I don't know what Trey Hendrickson you're going to get. I do a radio interview about once a month in Baltimore, mostly in season, but I did it right before the draft, and they were asking me, what kind of player we're getting in Trey Hendrickson. I said, guys, I don't know. I mean, he's a almost 32-year-old guy coming off core muscle surgery. That doesn't sound like a formula to be paying a guy $60 million of guaranteed money, which they did. And they're expecting him to be Trey Hendrickson-like. Now, the other part of Trey Hendrickson-like is doesn't play the run great. You're gonna find that out, and is that something that the Bengals know they can take advantage of? Like, Trey's getting upfield on every play. We're just gonna run inside of him, and he's gonna be all mad and all those things. And we know his patent move, which is swim around, go deep, and Joe knows how to escape stuff like that. So I'm just super interested to see what he's like. Like, if before the Bengals play, they will have played 6 games, Baltimore. Will we see the 17.5 sack Trey Hendrickson, or are we seeing a deteriorating Trey Hendrickson? I honestly don't know the answer to that. I'm not rooting against him. I just don't know the answer to that. Again, when you're 30-plus coming off surgery, I said this before, man. If you'd have told me the first practice in Dayton when A.J. Green got hurt that one year that I'd never see the same A.J. Green ever again, I'd have gone, oh, you're crazy. Like, what's going to happen to A.J.? Well, something happened to A.J. Green, and he never was the same player even close to it ever again.
All right. As has been well documented, Skinny, the AFC North has 3 brand new head coaches. The Bengals are the only one that returned their head coach for 2026. You have Todd Monken, the former Ravens offensive coordinator in Baltimore as their head coach. You have, in Cleveland as their head coach. You have Jesse Minter as the head coach in Baltimore, taking over for the incredibly successful John Harbaugh, who has moved on to take over the New York Football Giants. And you have Mike McCarthy running things in Pittsburgh. Which one of those three coaches intrigues you the most?
I think Jesse Minter, Mount St. Joseph University graduate Jesse Minter, that would be. Cincinnati's own. His father, Rick, the former head coach at the University of Cincinnati. He seems like he's been on the fast track to be a head coach for a while. I think he takes over clearly the best situation of the three. Like, who's Pittsburgh's quarterback right now? They don't even know. Who's Cleveland's quarterback right now? They don't even know. You know, if you're Jesse Minter, my quarterback is Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson's healthy, he's obviously a difference maker. They went out and did some things in the offseason to better that roster. So he intrigues me the most because I think that's the team the Bengals have to beat to win this division. I don't think it's Pittsburgh. I don't think it's Cleveland. I think it's Baltimore, and I don't even think it's a close second.
I do think that sometimes the schedule makers try to, certainly when it comes to the AFC or to divisional matchups, try to back end or backload the schedule, if you will, to have some of these marquee matchups happen in the final, let's say, month to maybe 8 weeks of the season, so they carry more weight, right? That's how they sometimes project it. Do you see the Bengals kind of falling into that conversation? I do, because you have two matchups with the Cleveland Browns after December 5th. December 6th, they play in Cleveland. They play January 9th or 10th against the Browns at Paycor. They play Baltimore, as we have documented, on New Year's Eve. And they play Pittsburgh. Yeah, and they play Cleveland at the end, and they play Pittsburgh on November 15th. So that's 4 games after mid-November.
Yeah, and the fact that those last 2 games are at home. I mean, most division races, right, come down to one of the final 2 weeks usually. Not always, but usually. And what better way to have than say, we've got 2 divisional games that if you got to make up a game on Baltimore, there's your opportunity. There's no better opportunity than that. Or you're a game up on Baltimore with a chance to clinch it home. There's no better opportunity than that. Or again, if you need to win a couple of games at the end and have one of the other team that you're chasing lose a game, well, you got your opportunity, man. You got 2 home games in a row. So yeah, I think that they got a little bit of a favor with that in that regard. I think it's good for them.
I also recall last year's schedule, and we looked at I believe it was Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh, the Jets, and the Bears in that 3-game homestand, and they went 1-2.
All 3 should have been winnable. All 3 were winnable, and yet you lose one game 39-38. You lose another game 47-42. It felt like the first of those 3 games was the Pittsburgh game. Like, okay, what a big win, prime time. They're going to win these next 2 games, and the offense certainly did its part, and the defense didn't. And even though you still had a chance to salvage the season with that Baltimore stretch, that was kind of the death knell. Like, at that point, you were totally digging out from under. And, those are things you need to take advantage of. You can't lose a home game to New Orleans this year. You just can't. Those things can't happen.
No, right.
Yeah, and I think those are the ones. Like, there were. Every year I do a prediction column in September right before the season, and the way I always break it down, I know we just did it game by game. I usually don't do that. I usually just do a likely win, likely loss, and swing games. And every year, I've done this for how many years. Every year, one of the likely wins becomes a loss because it's the NFL. And one of the likely losses becomes a win because it's the NFL. And then if you could just go about 500 in those swing games. Well, the Bengals were a disaster in the swing games. 2 of the likely wins were the Jets game and the Bears game that became losses. And that, again, that rarely happens. Usually it's one likely win becomes a loss, one likely loss becomes a win. Rarely are there multiples of those, but they were awful in the swing games last year. So you got to make sure you take care of the likely wins for sure and do what you're supposed to do in the swing games. Swing games are swing games for a reason. They're 500 games. Go 500 in them.
There are 2 games that I see that they absolutely, positively cannot lose. New Orleans, you mentioned one of them, and the other one's home to Tennessee.
Absolutely.
Those 2,
right.
Those are non-negotiable. You've got to win them, and obviously, as we just talked about, Skinny, we had a couple of those last year on the schedule, and the Bengals failed to take full advantage of them. Anything else stick out to you about the schedule?
No, the 3 primetime games, it feels right right? Like 6-11 teams don't get 5 primetime games out of the chute. But if this team is what we think it's going to be, I think Carolina's a playoff caliber team. Could that game get flexed? I was trying to look at some of the flex games. I don't think Kansas City can. I think the Kansas City game is going to be protected by Fox as a national game, which they're allowed to protect. So I don't think that one gets flexed in. There aren't a lot of other flex candidates, if you will, for lack of a better term. So could you get maybe one more of those games flexed? Yeah, that gives you 4 prime times, and that probably again feels right. 3 off of a 6-11, even though it's it's still the Joe Burrow team that went to the Super Bowl in the AFC Championship game. At first glance, when I first saw this schedule, I thought, boy, that seems light. And then I started looking and thinking, no, that's probably right. I mean, the Madrid game is not a primetime game, but it is a national TV game. The Kansas City game is a national TV game on Fox, and so they probably did about right. But I wouldn't be shocked to see them get flexed into one more primetime game because of it.
I tell you one thing that made my heart very happy last night, and you're always concerned about my true happiness.
I know what it's going to be, and it doesn't even involve a regular season game, does it?
Yeah, well, I don't think you're thinking of what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay,
what were you thinking?
I was thinking going back to Philadelphia on the preseason game.
Very good.
Yeah,
that is one of them.
Yeah.
That's preseason. One thing that's going to make my heart very happy, we have 7 1:00 games. Oh,
yeah, no doubt. That stood out to me, too. That's funny you say that.
Oh, thank football gods above.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I did the same thing, because I looked at the kickoff times and went, wow, look at that string of 1:00s. In fact, it's weird. Aside from the Madrid game, which is a 9:30 kickoff Cincinnati time, the 3 primetime games and Kansas City, and then you have 2 flex games. The Indy game doesn't have a day or time, and the Cleveland game doesn't have a day or time. The other 10 games are all 1:00 kickoffs. The other 10.
Love it.
That's insane. I love it too. I mean, that's the normal Sunday, and that's the other part about those early 5 games, Mike. To that point, you have what people would deem a normal NFL week for 5 straight weeks.
Right.
And then you have it again coming out of the bye at Baltimore. But it is literally a normal routine of 1:00 Sunday, Monday recovery, Tuesday off, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice, Saturday walkthrough, Sunday game. You have that for 5 straight weeks, technically 7 straight games, because I think the first 2 out of the bye are both 1:00 kickoffs, if I'm not mistaken. And so you got a chance there to say, hey, we're in a normal routine. We got no excuse. There's no excuses of a short week. There's no excuses of international travel. There's no excuses of playing in prime time and coming back and having to play on that short week. You got 7 straight games that are a normal NFL week. You got to take advantage of that.
And I think the Bengals will. And that's, to a degree, I think they, I have them going 3-3 in their first 6 games. But I think that does help them in terms of finding some stability and unity with a lot of this schedule. To me, is how do the Bengals play with their new talent? How does the new talent gel together? And how do the Bengals come up with momentum for the second half of the season? Why do I say that? Because in 2021 and 2022, the Bengals played their best football in the second half of the season. That's not debatable. In 2023, I believe it was, they again found their rhythm in the second half of the season, or in 2024, sorry. In 2024, they found their rhythm in the second half of the season. I think the Bengals will gel throughout the first part of this season, and then I think they'll take off. I think the schedule allows for them to get into that.
I do too. I'm with you. I do think they'll get off to a better start than you think, but you know what? That's why in a few months we play the games, Mikey.
Indeed. Yes, and it's the preseason, but we do have the preseason schedule out now. The Bengals play their first 2 preseason games at home, and that's significant because Zach Taylor and his staff can plan their training camp around staying at home and not having to travel. And actually, when you're making roster decisions towards the end of training camp, that's a big deal. So they play Detroit on August 13th at Paycor, and then they play the Chicago Bears at Paycor 9 days later, August 22nd. And then they wrap up at my older daughter's home of Philadelphia, August 28th. So I will be driving there, spending the night with Janie Sharag and Raja, the king, the dog.
That's awesome.
Maybe
That's awesome.
Maybe the dog will let me. Maybe she will let me sleep next to the dog if I'm up to doing that.
And I do wonder this, Mike. You mentioned there's the nine days in between game 1 Detroit, game 2 Chicago. There's been rumblings of a joint practice. We know Zach Taylor does not want to do a road joint practice. Could that be the Bears reciprocating from a couple of years ago, and they come down here for that week with a joint practice, especially with so I don't know, but I didn't look at the Bears preseason schedule. I'm guessing that's why that game is on that date, is they're trying to come up with something from a joint practice perspective. So I think that's a real possibility. It's not etched in stone, but I know he's talked about trying to do that. I know he didn't want to do it on the road like they did the year in Chicago. Maybe you just say, hey, we came to you once. It's your turn to come down to us.
All right, tell us what's up on Local 12 and local12.com.
Yep, we got the schedule release, got a couple of analysis videos up as well. This will be up for some analysis. So we've all analyzed the schedule to death. And like I said, now we just go play the games. We got a big week ahead for us, Mike. We got Joe Burrow on Wednesday.
Yes, we do. That will be Wednesday. I'm looking forward to hearing from what he has to say about all of the topics we've talked about, the new roster, the schedule, his comfort level, where he is at mentally. We'll hear on Wednesday. Also, I said at the top of the pod, we'd talk about the golf event you were at this morning. Yeah. What can you tell us about the golf event, Skinny, that you were at?
Yeah, so it's in honor of Jeff Hobson of Bengals.com, a longtime friend of mine, former colleague of mine at the Cincinnati Post. We've known each other for a long time. It's in honor of his grandson, Jack, and it's simply called the Jack. And so I played with Paul Daner Jr. from The Athletic, his father, Big Paul, and Paul Jr.'s father-in-law, radio legend Mike McConnell. That was our foursome today. And we had a fine time. We played pretty well, shot a 65. But there were a handful of Bengals coaches there, including Zach Taylor was playing, Dan Pitcher was playing in a group with Jerry Montgomery, the defensive line coach. They were behind us, actually, and there were a couple of drives that I like, man, that's a big ball right there. Jerry Montgomery's a big guy. I thought if Jerry Montgomery gets a hold of one, it probably could carry that far. Evan McPherson played with William Wagner and a couple other
very good
members. He is, yes.
Evan, a terrific golfer.
Yes, he is. In fact, his team finished second. They shot a 61. The winning team shot a 57. There were no former Bengals in that group, but you could see these guys that look like they look. George Vogel, actually, from Channel 5, somehow got these three ringers together and played. Because I said, George, how'd you play? He goes, I didn't play any good. He said, but I had three dudes with me, and they shot 57, which is 15 under par. But pretty good playing right there, in my opinion. Lewis Breeden played, Jim Breach played, so it was a nice turnout, and I think a lot of them did it and played it because who doesn't like a golf outing, right? But it was also to help honor the what the event's for, which is for Jeff's grandson.
That is terrific. Where was it again?
Legendary Run, and it was in great shape.
That's good. I'll check that out.
Legendary's great.
All right, he is Richard Skinner. My name is Mike Petralia, Trags. You can find my material up along with my explanation behind a 12-5 forecast for the 2026 Bengals at clnscincy.com. Be sure to check out a lot of my Bengals and Reds content up on the X at Trags, Trags, and of course the channel for the Bengals Jungle Roar podcast, and that is youtube.com/@Jungle Roar Pod. Until next we speak, he's Richard Skinner. I'm Mike Petralia. You know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.